Find out that their dogs don't actually like them.
Dog's like, I hate you. I never
Feed me. Feed me now.
cut that crap. I don't want any more petting from you. Just feed me. That's it.
Stop picking me up. You smell funny.
I'm only doing this for. And by the way, I'm sick of taking you for walks every day, human. You go on your own walks. When the student is ready, the teacher arrives. The problem is most people aren't ready.
Now is author Daren Martin.
Culture is the game. You don't change the culture, you don't change the company.
Great cultures over the course of 10 years will yield a 746% increase in your net profit.
Holy moly.
One person in the top 1% is worth 12 in the bottom 1%. Called the culture architect for a reason.
We need to get into it.
Okay. Welcome back to Company Culture with Daren Martin.
And Elise Martin.
Hey, man, it has been raining like crazy.
Freezing.
It's awesome. And it's
So
cold.
cold.
Oh, fall is my favorite time of year. So, but man, it seems like forever since we've been in the studio.
Oh, forever.
Yeah,
Forever.
we
missed a couple of weeks.
Well, we were out of town. We had some travel going on, some speaking going on, but we're back.
Then the hurricane happened.
Then
We
the
had to
hurricane
reschedule.
happened.
Yep.
Yes, everything got rescheduled. So when the student is ready, the teacher arrives. That has always been one of my favorite little sayings.
So what does that mean exactly?
I think what it means is that you can't learn something unless you're prepared to learn it.
Or
I mean,
willing.
Truth can jump up and pop you right in the face.
Right.
But well, let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
How many people do you think, on average, are living the life that they want to be living?
1%.
How many companies are performing at their peak?
0.
Okay. Wow, that's an even smaller number than 1%. I think by and large.
Okay, when you say companies at their peak, I mean, let's think about this. I mean, there's always room for improvement, right?
Of course.
What's a peak? Is the peak like where we just stop and fall off the other side of the S curve?
Fair enough. This
right?
is my analytical wife's brain at work. Very true. But so anytime lately when I've been speaking, I start. Sometimes I start with raise your hand if there's something in your life that if that thing were to change, it would make your life immediately better. Raise your hand if there's something at work that if that were to change, it would make things. So there's a lot of wanna, coulda, shoulda,
woulda.
Wouldn't it be great if? But how many people are doing what the great Gandhi said, which is be the change you want to see in the world, right? So, in my experience, and I'm trying to figure out how to not make this show a complete downer because that's not the point of it. But in my experience, many, many people want what other people have. They don't want to do what they did.
Everybody wants to ride the coattails of somebody who's already done the work, right?
Yeah, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with taking someone else's progress and jumping on that. We do this on a regular basis. We find somebody that's doing something we like on social media or deal, and then we'll replicate it, or we figure out break the code and figure out how to do that in an even better fashion. So we're constantly doing what the great Austin Kleon talks about, steal like an artist. In fact, my book format is a replica of
steal like an artist.
Well, it's not
Austin's a replica. A replica would be an exact copy.
No, but it's same size, same format.
And concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, Austin, sorry if you want to complain about it, but you said steal like an artist, so I did exactly that.
Great inspiration. He was an inspiration to you.
But yes, absolutely, as many people have been. So I tell people all the time that I have the most phenomenal coaches. I mean, if you knew the list of my coaches, many of whom are dead. And
How do you talk to them with candlelight?
Yeah, we do seances at the house. No, but I'm constantly learning from other people because we read.
Sorry,
is that what a seance looks like?
I guess. I don't know.
We read.
That's what I imagine. I imagine people holding hands and singing Bloody Murder or something. I don't know. My cousins used to do it when I was 5.
Yeah,
very creepy.
Whatever you do, don't play with the Ouija board.
Okay.
I've never done that.
Never
but
done
it's
that.
supposed to
I've
be
never seen
really
one
bad
either.
mojo.
I just never touched them.
So,
Anyway.
but we are getting far afield here, Miss Elise.
Sorry.
So, do you think though that it's true that a lot of people want what other people have, but they don't want to do what they did?
Yes.
They don't want to do what.
No,
they
it's true.
do.
I used to have a friend, and he would talk a lot about his problems, and I would say, "Well, you can do this." No, I can't do that. Well, you could do this. No, I can't.
I call that skeet shooting. Skeet shooting is when you come up with a solution to somebody's problem, and they just keep. That will never work.
But they're sitting there telling you how awesome it is that you have X, Y, Z, and they want to know how to get there. So you're trying to tell them how to get there, but they just keep skeet shooting it down.
Yeah, and when you realize that so much of life and so much about skill sets and all of that is the true 10,000 hours, right? You get there by doing it. When people say, "Well, I want to be a speaker. What should I do?" I'm like, "Speak." You know, go find somewhere.
I don't care. Writer, right?
If it's in front.
Start writing.
Yes, exactly. And there's a lot of hopes and promises. And one day I'm going to. I know a guy. That sounded very.
I know a guy.
I know a guy.
I know a guy
who can take care of this situation for us.
Yeah, I know a guy.
So I know a guy that works a job. Okay.
Job. As in a job or.
A job. He has young kids at home. He works for a very large company, multi-billion-dollar company.
Okay.
Very good, cushy, nice job, right?
Okay.
Goes to work, regular deal. But in his heart, he's a novelist. He wants to write novels.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I was at this company for a while. And I was coaching for a couple of years. And occasionally I would say, "Hey, have you started writing?" No, don't have time. The kids, da-da-da-da. No, look, I mean, a book... If he's a good novelist, a book could completely change his life. I mean, it could turn things around. You know the book, not a big fan of it, Bridges of Madison County. Bridges of Madison County was written by a dude, okay? It really hacks off some of the female romance writers. I'm not going to attest to that as my sister, Sabrina Jeffries. She is a female romance writer.
Right.
But some dude writes his first book and it becomes a bestseller, becomes a New York Times bestseller overnight. Now, how does that happen? But evidently
girls like dudes.
Yeah, girls like dudes, and they like stories about unrequited love, and
It's written by a dude. Maybe there's some cool insight there.
Well, it was just a cool story, albeit whatever. But the point was, he wrote that book because he lost his job. And he wrote that book in 3 months because he was going to be broke. And then the universe just smiled on him, and guess what? It became a big hit.
So he got forced into...
He was forced into it. So he, like this guy I'm talking about, could have written a book a long, long time ago.
He could have taken a sabbatical from his job or quit.
Yeah, or
just
quit.
to pursue his dream. Take
look,
some time. Save some money.
If you write
Prepare.
1 page a day,
Yeah.
at the end of the year, how many pages have you written?
365 pages. Depending on the lunar cycle, it might be 364.5. Got to be specific. You asked.
Oh my goodness! Did I tell you the guy that when I spoke for the Presidential Scholars? That sounds very. It was actually very cool. I did a 3-hour closing address for the Presidential Scholars.
Okay.
And before that, people from the Bush administration came. It's a Bill Clinton, George Bush thing, right? And they came, and of course, George W. Bush, our neighbor, lives in Texas. Was
He's not our next door neighbor. He's our state.
He's not our next door neighbor.
In our like,
he's in our
around.
sphere.
He's here.
He's in the bubble of Dallas. So at any rate, he had his press people there, or people that had been on his cabinet. And I don't remember who, it was like the chief of staff or somebody, had been with him for 8 years, for two terms. He wrote an article called George Bush is Smarter Than You.
Well,
so because when you think about it, George Bush was not viewed by the public and the media as being very smart. I mean, he used words like nuclear
but
and
how
all
else
this.
did he become president if he wasn't smart?
Well, I mean, granted. But the point is that people didn't view him that way, and yet in reality, he was wicked smart. So at any rate, I don't know what that has to do with anything except that Elise Martin.
There was no point here?
Elise Martin is smarter than you. She really is. So, okay, that was a compliment.
Oh.
Okay.
I'm not smarter. Smarter than anyone. I'm just the average person. I'm just very normal. Don't want to be smarter than anyone, because the person that thinks that they're smarter than everyone is actually dumber than everyone.
And doesn't do what we're talking about. The student is never ready for the teacher to arrive when you don't realize you're a student. In fact, I just did a speaking gig recently, and I said, and there were 400 people in the audience. Some of them were students.
I love that
college students. And I said, hey, if you're a student, stand up. Guess how many people out of the 400 stood up? About 20.
The students.
Because those were the people who are enrolled in school.
Right.
And then I went ahead to bust out the rest of the audience and said, by the way, that's literally what I meant. I was talking about people who are actually in school. But when someone asks if you're a student, you should stand up, because the best people in life are ongoing students. So it's about your willingness to learn. I was on an elevator a while back. I had a big speaking gig for a company, and I get on the elevator, and the lady's like, "Oh, it's just one of these conference things and a bunch of stuff." And she's like, "Man, there's nothing more for me to learn. I've been doing what I've been doing for 20 years." And I'm like, "Oh, wow." So there's actually a parable.
Oh yeah,
in the New Testament. You want me to tell the story?
Tell this story. I love this story, because I always imagine like girls in these flowing dresses carrying. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna spoil the story.
The bride and groom are getting married, and they are not there yet. So all of the bridesmaids, or all of the guests, are waiting outside, right? All these bridesmaids to join in the festivities, waiting outside the gates of the big castle, whatever it is. Half of them brought extra oil. Okay, so the bride and groom don't show up for a long time. And so the other half only brought enough oil for what they thought was going to take the time to get in. Well, all of a sudden they're running out of oil. And they look at the other people who have the oil and said, hey, share your oil with us so we don't miss it, just in case they show up, you know. And the people who had the extra oil said, no, I'm not going to give you my oil, right? So they go off to buy oil. In the meantime, the bride and groom show up. They go into the gate. All of the bridesmaids who had the extra oil, of course, go in, and then they shut the door. Nobody else is allowed in. So the other bridesmaids that ran and got their oil, they come back, and the door's shut.
Darn.
Yeah. So that's always been kind of a mystery to me, like what's that's all about, until I saw the great Scott Peck. Scott Peck wrote The Road Less Traveled. Have you ever read that? Yeah, it's a great book. Ziggy, you ever read Road Less Traveled?
I have not read that one.
It was on the New York Times bestseller list for about 700 years. No, I mean it really was back in the day, like maybe 20 years running or something. It was just
so cool if you can be on the New York Times bestseller list for 700 years. Has the New York Times been around 700?
No, they haven't. It was this cataclysmic, though, just book that was very eye-opening. It hit a generation at just the right time. The very first line of the book is "Life is difficult." Now, I don't necessarily agree with that as a premise. You know this. But at any rate, so I heard Scott Peck speak, and he was talking about that particular parable. And he said, I believe what that parable is saying is you can't share your preparation with somebody else. You can't share your preparation with somebody else. You can't take what I've done as a speaker,
right,
which is be in front of,
10,000 hours.
A lot of audiences in all sizes, right? The practice that I've done, the learning that I've done. I was telling somebody recently, I said, I want to be a speaker. I was like, look, I met for many, in the speaker world, we're kind of breathing rare air, right? For the amount that we get paid and the opportunities we get, it's a dream job. But we fought and worked our way to that place, and we still do. We still have to.
We still work very hard.
I'm reading I've got two books on speaking that I've just recently read, and I can't wait for Bruce's book.
And you think about the level that you're on, and you're still learning, right? Because you're constantly learning, a constant student, and a constant student is that's how you get to where you want to go. Keep learning.
Absolutely.
Stop saying, I know everything, I don't need to learn anymore. I had a woman yesterday, we met someone for brunch, a couple, and she says to me, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. You're in marketing. How did you get into that? Did you study that? No, I didn't study that. I took some courses and I read a lot of books, and I keep reading and I keep learning. And she said, wow, how did you learn how to learn by yourself. I'm like, you just start, it's a passion, I don't know. It's like Tucker, and I never had a dog. So all of a sudden 3 dog books later and tons of online research, documentaries, I'm just voracious, right?
Right,
but
which is what you did when you had your bird. You you know so much about birds, but it was because you were fascinated with the subject.
It's because I want to know. I want to know about everything that I'm dealing with. So if you want to hire a guy to manage your YouTube channel, why aren't you a student of that before hiring that person? Don't get mad that you hired someone.
Speaking of which, by the way,
our YouTube guy is amazing.
Oh my, wow.
Amazing.
Hit us up if you're interested. But the guy that's doing our YouTube stuff, Mehmet, he's fantastic. He's phenomenal. Anyway, but can I give Ann Bruce a little plug?
Yes.
I'm trying to give Ann Bruce a plug. So Ann Bruce has a book coming out called Speak for a Living.
I'm so excited about this book. We just got notification that it's going to be shipping soon.
Okay, so I'm actually in the book. I don't know how, but I'm in the book. But you know what? I'm not going to read the book because I'm in the book. I'm going to read the book because I want to hear what Ann Bruce has to say about Speak for a Living, which we're doing.
Because she knows so much about it. And she's such a great, awesome person. Oh, my goodness.
That's why I love watching.
She's great to pass ideas across. Again, you see, a constant student. We've got people in our network that are in the same field as us, so we can share with them and say, hey, what do you think? Instead of saying, I know everything. This is perfect. I decided. No.
So I actually have a quote, I think it's in Whiteboard, that says, beware the person who is always the teacher, never the student.
It's actually in Whiteboard Part 2.
Whiteboard Part 2? There is no Whiteboard Part 2.
Yes, there is. It's in the cupboard.
Okay. No, baby. I think it's in the actual whiteboard.
Nope. It's in Whiteboard Part 2. I remember you showed me Whiteboard.
I have started working on Whiteboard Part 2.
It's in Whiteboard Part 2, so
but it was actually based on the guy that I used to know who was always the teacher, never the student. People who don't read books, for example, what are you thinking? How are you not reading at least some little bit? The average American,
articles.
50% of people didn't read a book last year.
Did you hear this thing that I found this out recently, that it says that millennials only read headlines?
What?
Yeah, it says that most of them only read the headlines. So they go through the news and they just read the headlines. Unless the headline is catching, they're never going to read the whole article.
Well, I mean, we live in, there's so
they're
much information.
They're actually doing testing with fonts, and they're saying certain fonts cause them to actually read the headline so they don't skip it.
Okay, so...
Crazy.
This could actually be a Martinized, but it's not going to be. But one of my pet peeves is books that go on for 800 pages that could be about 80.
Yeah,
okay,
that's true.
Because the headlines really are where the action's at. Don't bury the lead. Sorry, that's a great thing about haiku and poetry. You're forced to say something in a small segment of time. And when you do that work, sometimes it comes out better. But man, we have been all over the map. But I think but the principal part of what we're talking about is when the student is ready, the teacher arrives. Are you ready? Are you a ready student? And what I would ask you is, what are your disciplines? What are your practices that you're doing? What are you learning at work? You may already know your job. Great. Are you learning other people's jobs? Are you figuring out
the company?
Are you learning about the company? I mean, we're going to do a whole show on like innovation and coming with ideas and so forth. But are you really disciplining yourself to learn and know the company and to know the business? There's a friend of mine, actually, I'm going to do some coaching at the new company he's at tomorrow for a couple of days. He's bringing me over there. This guy was at another company I was at, an oil and gas company. And what blew me away was it was not his, how do I say this? It wasn't his place. It wasn't his position to really understand the refining side of the business, but he studied it and knew it, and he could explain the whole thing. I mean, it was impressive that he learned the business that well, even though it didn't apply to his immediate job. How well do you know your business, or do you just know that little bitty part?
That was what I was saying about YouTube or a web designer, hiring a web designer. I mean, if I want to outsource social media right now, which is something, it takes a lot of time, I need to know everything about it. I need to be able to tell them, no, you're wrong. This is the way it should be done, or that's awesome. You can actually see and understand the results. So many people get swept under the rug by someone who says they know everything about something. They pay them a lot of money, and then they're not able to analyze and understand the results. So, for example, if you outsource your social media and then the company that you paid a lot of money to for an ad says, look at that, we got 12,000 views. Well,
that's meaningless.
Did you know that a view could be someone just scrolling past it? They don't even have to watch that video.
It's not relevant data.
It's not relevant data. Relevant data would be clicks, shares, comments, right? And a lot of people don't know that. And so it's important to constantly be a student. If you're not going to do something, at least know the general sphere of it.
It's like buying stocks at random without understanding the company you're buying and really understanding the business.
Exactly. So you're throwing your money away. So encourage your staff to read. Encourage everyone to know everybody's stuff. Encourage people to talk about what they do, and encourage people to try. Here's an easy one. Here's something you can do today. Instead of saying, I know, say, tell me more about that.
I love it. That's great.
Yep.
That's actually great. Okay, you want to Martinize something?
Yeah, let's Martinize something.
Martinize.
Martinize.
So somebody is coming to our place today to move the internet box.
Finally.
And the reason is because it is sitting in our entry hallway, snaked out from our bedroom where it has been for a while, because when they came to install the cable, what they did was, so this was an AT&T deal, okay? And it was digital fiber, so we're really excited because we get super fast speeds and all that using this. But what happened was the person who showed up to install it went from the hallway of our condo, the building, into our place, into the shortest distance that they could possibly go. So they put it in the room that is like
to the front door.
It's a bunker, okay? Right. Cement everywhere.
No windows.
No windows.
Mm-hmm. It's like putting it in a closet.
Yeah, it's like putting it in a closet. So instead of going, because previously the internet had been up in the half floor so that it could reach kind of throughout the place, reach out on the balcony. So this numbskull, whoever showed up to do this, was,
numbskull.
Have I ever used that word?
I don't.
So this numbskull,
no,
okay.
Just someone
who's not paying attention to their job and is not following the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Because what would have happened was he or she would have walked into the place and gone, where is the optimal place to place the internet?
Especially if they didn't have instructions. They don't have time, right? I know they have to do 100 of them at once, right?
I'm sure there's a, perspective. There's a different point of view. Their whole, maybe they're being pressured.
They still need to go in and say, if this was my house,
where would I want it?
Where would I want it?
And that's just doing good business. They did it when I was out of town or something. I never got to speak to them. I didn't get to give any instruction. But that's just poor practice. That is poor practice. What was worse was when we called AT&T, whatever, they said, oh, well, that's the installation company. We don't have anything to do with it. I'm like, well, we're paying you. Anyway, we finally gave up the fight. It's just not worth it. It's not worth the 5 hours on the phone and going back and forth. And so we're just going to pay somebody to move it. But if you do a job right. The job is not done until the job is done right, which means you ought to be considering and taking into thoughtfulness, what would that consumer want? What would that other person want? That's my Martinize.
That's the Martinize, and that's our show.
Dan, that's the show.
That's the show. So don't forget to subscribe, like us.
Share, like us.
Comments, tell us what you want to hear about. And, of course, most importantly, today, instead of saying, I know, say, tell me more about that.
I love it. And go read a book.
Yeah.
Company of Owners. It's a good place to start. All right. That's it.